Welcome to the Wellness Realised podcast, where we discuss all things wellbeing related. I am your host and my name is Nadine McCabe and I am the founder of EmpowerPlan, which is a unique and proactive wellbeing service provider for organisations and their employees. EmpowerPlan provides rapid transformational therapy as well as standard counselling services for your staff. We also provide on-site therapy-based wellbeing and development workshops, which are all inclusive and free to the organisations when they sign their employees up to an annual membership package. We are an EAP provider that is unique in our service offering and focus heavily on maintaining both mental and physical fitness of our members, whilst also developing life skills to enhance performance and prevent ill mental health. Welcome to the Wellness Realised podcast. Today we have got a special guest with us. We're going to be talking about self-compassion. We've got the wonderful Kathy Bell. Welcome, Kathy. Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Of course, yeah. My name is Kathy Bell and I am a breathwork facilitator. And then I get stuck. No, I've been sharing breathwork for the past few years after finding breathwork as a practice for myself. And yeah, I'm just...
So what is breathwork? How would you explain it to someone who's not ever heard of breathwork before? It obviously seems quite self-explanatory. You're breathing, we breathe every day, but yeah. What in terms of how do you use the breath in your practice? What does it involve?
Yeah, sure. So breathwork is a bit of a buzzword, I'll admit, at the moment. And I mean, I was speaking to a lady in the swimming bath the other day, and she was telling me all about Wim Hof on the TV. And so, you know, it's very... So breathwork really is any work that you do with your breath. So of course we unconsciously breathe all the time, but we can use different techniques with our breath to bring about change within our physical body, our mental awareness, and our mental health even. And so many people will maybe have come across breathing in yoga, so it's called pranayama. Something like tummy breathing maybe, or alternate nostril breathing, that could still be categorized as breath work, but traditionally called pranayama. Or you may have come across things like mindfulness breathing, box breathing, breath counting. Still, all of that would probably fall under the breathwork category. However, the breathwork that I share is more of an experience. And you will know because you've shared a class with me. But breathwork I share is like I say, more of an experience, and we use a active breath rhythm for an extended period of time to bring about this huge shift in our state of consciousness, really, which sounds a little bit scary, but really what we're doing very, very powerfully is bringing our conscious awareness out of the mind into the body and allowing the intelligence of our breath and our bodies to bring about some change within the body. I suppose the first and most very real experience that people have is bringing that awareness into the body, and the breath technique that I use helps to clear the nervous system very, very powerfully. So it can be incredibly calming and soothing, but it can also be an incredible tool to help clear the body of things like trauma, stuck energy, if that's a term that you may use, and yeah, bring about these shifts in our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Yeah, I think powerful is definitely a word that I would use to describe it. As you mentioned, I did join one of your wonderful group sessions to experience it for myself, and it came at quite a strange moment, really. It was kind of one of those things where it was fate. It was kind of you came into my life, or we crossed paths at a time when I truly needed it. So I'd been experiencing CPTSD due to past trauma, and I'd been triggered prior to us speaking and arranging the session, and your session was just absolutely amazing. It was so powerful to release the trauma that I was experiencing, because I was in such a dark place at that time. And all of a sudden, that one single session, we were there for 2 hours, and it was the most life-changing experience I'd ever had, to be fair. It allowed me to make space for healing. That because all of the emotions and things, the trauma was all trapped inside. But having that breathwork session allowed that space that I needed to reconnect with myself, reconnect with my body, reconnect with my environment around me, and my own energy, and be comfortable again with my own energy. So yeah, very powerful. Definitely recommend
yeah, I'm so glad.
Everybody that I meet.
That was such a beautiful share there, Nadine, because I sometimes refrain from saying things like it create space for your healing, because that can almost seem a little bit not wishy-washy, but if you say that term, people are like, well, what, how, but I'm so glad you use that language, because that's exactly what it has the capacity to do, and like you say, that huge release.
If you're in that dark place, you feel like engulfed by it. You're kind of swallowed up by that darkness, and you feel like the world's caving in on you, so to speak. So having that breathwork session, it opened up the world again. So it stopped you from feeling so closed in and so in that darkness. It made things light again. And then it gives you that chance to really reflect on your emotions, to reflect on what you need, and start putting that healing process in place.
Oh yeah, it was such an honor to hold that space for you, and have you in that group.
I was the noisy one, for sure.
You're not the only noisy one. It's absolutely fine.
So we brought you here today to talk about self-compassion. So self-compassion, I know, it can get mixed up sometimes with self-esteem, can't it? And there is quite a clear difference in terms of what self-esteem is and what self-compassion is. How would you describe to people what self-compassion actually is?
Yeah, great question. Self-compassion was something that I didn't know that I needed. And yet it found its way into my life really beautifully. Self-compassion is the process of having forgiveness and love and just an openness for yourself, an acceptance of yourself. We spend so much of our time in our minds judging ourselves. If you were to have, I don't know, what's that thing called, where like a transcription of your mental chatter, I can guarantee there's endless judgments going on throughout the day, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, and oh, I'm so, judge, we kind of judge ourselves constantly in our minds. And I probably will go as far as say is that we are judging ourselves outwardly a lot of the time, just comments that we may make, self-deprecating comments that we might say out loud to our colleagues, to our friends, to our family, judging ourselves and kind of putting ourselves down. And so self-compassion would be in essence the absolute opposite of that, where we have this level of openness and forgiveness, like I've said, towards ourselves, in remembering that we're just these amazing human beings that are all trying our best. And we're imperfect.
Yeah.
And
see, that judgment is the self-esteem, isn't it? So when you're have a low self-esteem, it's because you are judging yourself. It's because you are comparing yourself to others, and you're giving yourself that sort of that low that judgment on yourself that makes you look at yourself as something worse than everybody else, or you've done something bad. Whereas self-compassion is that acceptance that you're human and you make mistakes and it's okay and you can learn from it, and allowing yourself to feel things and being open, as you say, to those feelings and to those mistakes.
And I would, just to go a little bit out there, and this may be a little bit out there, but we are we are a society, that's founded on Christian, religion. It's like the widest, basically, that the idea that of sin, that we can do something wrong and that we're either good or bad, and we judge ourselves constantly on this sin, or this sin, or bad and goodness, heaven and hell kind of thing, and it is so ingrained in our society. But and it's so damaging, and it keeps us so limited. Like, like the idea that we should ever compare ourselves to anybody else, the idea that we are not inherently worthy because we've done something bad, or we don't have the right body shape, or we don't have, whatever it is. The roots of it are really, really deep. When we really look at it, it's very, very deeply ingrained in our culture and our society. But with just a little bit of a hint of a revolution happening, we can see that just with a little bit of compassion, there can be huge shifts in the way we see each other, the way we see ourselves. And increasing self-esteem through self-compassion is one of the benefits.
It certainly adds to your self-worth, doesn't it? When you can accept yourself, you build that self-esteem, and it's where self-esteem building really starts. You can't have that self-esteem without having some form of self-compassion. It's quite funny how we can be compassionate to other people, but yet still have no compassion for ourselves. So we accept everybody else's flaws, and we accept everybody else when they make mistakes, and you'll have that compassion and try to gain that understanding. Oh, well, they've done this because of X, or they've done it because this has happened to them in their life, and this has been their past. So you accept them, and you have that compassion for other people's mistakes. But yet when it's ourselves, many people tend to struggle.
That is a very, very, very true. It's so much easier, isn't it, to be compassionate for other people. But I mean, even the idea of being compassionate towards yourself, if that feels uncomfortable, understanding why that might feel uncomfortable, so that's a whole other conversation, but I'll let you go on to your next
go off
question.
on many tangents here with this one.
I really could. I'll stop.
So with self-compassion, I know I'm currently working with a client in terms of their self-compassion, and one of the things that I've got them looking and doing their own research, and one of the things that we were looking at was the yin and yang of self-compassion. So there's a feminine side of self-compassion and a more masculine, fierce side of self-compassion. So your feminine side of self-compassion, maybe if you explained it, say a person was struggling with burnout at work, their feminine side of their self-compassion may think, right, I'm going to draw myself a bath, I'm going to do a bit of self-care, and I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to do a bit of meditation and mindfulness practice just to give myself that space.
Like a filling up your cup kind of activity, the self-care. Sure.
And then the yang side of the self-compassion is like the more action side of it. So if that same person was suffering with burnout, if they were demonstrating a yang side of self-compassion, they'd go to their manager and they'd explain why they need more time to do the tasks that they've given, and that explain to their manager how they're feeling and how they're feeling burnt out, and start to put proactive measures in place. So having a yin and yang approach, there needs to be that balance, because the yin is that being comfortable with ourselves and that self-soothing and that validating side of self-compassion. But yet the yang is that understanding our needs and that motivation and that action.
Yes. Or I would, putting boundaries in place. That's the, one of the most masculine or yang things you can do is to, exercise, not exercise, be explicit with your needs and your boundaries. Turning the computer off when work's over, or not taking the extra stuff home with you at the end of the day, or saying to a manager, I'm in need of some extra time here, and putting those action steps in place, and I suppose, when you put it like that, it makes so much sense, and there is that requirement for the balance. I fully agree with you there.
There needs to be a bit of both, doesn't there? I mean, you need both to really make things work truly. If you just ignore it and you're just completely in that yin mode, you're just going to go through life and not really take any actions towards your own self-care. It can be just as dangerous.
Yeah, the self-care becomes almost like the band-aid, if you're constantly in need of self-care because you are not offering yourself any compassion and not exercising your more yang state of compassion for yourself, then the flowy stuff, the kind of the baths, the self-care, the topping yourself back up, or filling your cup up becomes essential, and that really shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that you reach that point of like you say, close to burnout perhaps, where you then need to spend a day in the spa like I did yesterday.
Oh, that sounds delightful, making me jealous now.
It was lovely, but again, it just highlights that that need for the balance in the other areas of, maybe if I'm going to talk for myself at the moment, but if I'd put my boundaries, and exercised my boundaries in place, then I maybe wouldn't have needed quite so much of the other stuff. So it's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. And I think the yang side of things, people tend to find harder to accomplish when they do struggle with self-compassion, or they've got low self-esteem, because in order to actually take action, there's got to be a certain level of acceptance there.
Yeah, and worthiness. You've got to feel worthy enough to stand up for yourself. So to get into that yang state of putting those boundaries in place and asking for that support, or asking for external compassion, really, there has to be a level of what I've learned over the past 6 months or so, is that there has to be this level of self-worth. Because you were saying how it is really hard to ask for that, and do the yang stuff. As a space holder myself, so as a breathwork facilitator, I'm holding space for other people to do their thing, and sometimes it can be quite intense. And my energy and there has to be a level of self-importance in that, because otherwise I am just depleting myself every time that I'm, coming to a client or holding space, or, doing anything, even for my family. If I'm not putting myself in that, holding myself with that regard of actually, I'm quite important in this, and the work that I do is quite important. So I really, really need to, speak up when I need some support, or speak up if I can't, don't feel equipped to handle the situation in front of me. And that was a really big shift for me in terms of self-compassion, because before it had always been very much in the yin phase. So the self, it's interesting how these concepts are all tying together. Now we're having this conversation. It's really enlightening, actually. But that level of self-esteem has to be there for you to, I think, not completely, not absolute truth, but I think for me there definitely has to be this level of I don't want to say self-importance, because that's really it has the wrong connotation to it, but this high self-regard through high self-esteem, to be able to deliver that self-compassion to yourself in that balanced way that you speak of.
Yeah, definitely. They're all interconnected, and you can't have one without the other. And it's kind of like a building block, isn't it? I know. I can't remember her name now. I think it's Kristen Neff. She talks about 3 elements of self-compassion. So you've got the self-kindness element of self-compassion, you've got the mindfulness element of self-compassion, and then you've got like the common humanity side of it. So the self-kindness is where you're having that positive self-talk moment, and you're giving yourself, doing those self-care rituals that you know that you need, and treating yourself with kindness. But then the common humanity side of it is that understanding of humanity and being human, and allowing yourself to make those mistakes without that judgment. And then the mindfulness is that acknowledgement of how you feel, and acknowledgement of your own self-worth, acknowledgement of who you are, what your values are, and really that understanding that you've got of yourself, and acknowledging each of that and every aspect of yourself. And if you've got all of those 3, you can bring it all together to form that self-compassion.
Yeah, I've never had it broken down like that. I'm very I'm loving that those elements, that this lady's obviously, looked into and researched, and I'm like, yes, both, all 3, all tied together. Absolutely. Yeah.
Your mind, the words that you say though, they matter, don't they? You go about your day, and you can say silly things like you stand on a piece of Lego, and apart from the swear words that come out of your mouth straight away, you might start cursing yourself. And if it was you who's left them out, or if you like playing with Lego, I don't know whether you do, I do, but you might start saying, oh, you silly swear word or whatever, and just start berating yourself for whatever you've done. And you might be saying things jokingly, you might not really mean it, but your mind doesn't really care whether you mean it or not. It's hearing the words, and it takes things literally, and it kind of sticks. And I think that's one thing people don't really realize with regards to that negative self-talk, is that your mind can't really differentiate between what's true and false.
Well, the subconscious doesn't differentiate between what's true and false. The subconscious just gets the imprint from the brain. So if or the conscious mind, so if we're constantly, like you say, berating ourselves, the subconscious then holds that, because it has no mind of its own. It just gets imprinted with the thoughts that we repeatedly have. And if we're constantly berating ourselves, that is having over time a damaging effect on our inner world, and then ultimately outer world.
You see, that's where a lot of emotional abuse sort of takes hold though, isn't it? Because somebody who's been abused emotionally, or they're being gaslighted by a narcissistic partner or whatever, those negative things are being said to them, and their conscious mind knows that these things are not true, and their conscious mind may know that that's their personality that's doing this, but their subconscious is still listening and hearing those words, and the damage is actually still being done, even though their conscious part of their brain is making those reasonable adjustments. It's still happening. The damage is still happening, isn't it?
It is, and there has to be a massive level of like resistance to external. I was going to bring up external. It's not always just ourselves that we berate ourselves. There's often external influences. It might be co-workers, it might be partners, it might be family members that might be loving and well-meaning, but or said in a joking way that come in.
I've had to stop myself, because my daughter will do things, and I'll say, you've got your shoes on the wrong feet, you plonker.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you donut or a coral or a donkey or something.
Yeah.
Because she's done
Yeah.
something so silly. But
Yeah.
I consciously check myself, and I can hear myself say it, and I keep slapping myself saying,
Yeah.
no, it's got to stop doing
But
that.
then we're judging ourselves again, aren't we? We're like, oh God, I'm such a bad mother. I'm like terrible at this. I'm doing it all wrong. And it's so easy. It's so easy because, like I said, this judgment, separation, this judgment element, good, bad, right, wrong, is so ingrained, and it is so hard. So, even just taking, it can feel, I think, for somebody who is in any of these situations that we've described, like and it doesn't have a self-compassion practice, and is only just becoming aware of maybe negative self-talk or something, it can feel like a huge mountain ahead of you to be like, oh my God, how am I going to undo all of this? And it can feel massive, can't it? I think when you first start to notice, actually, my self-esteem is quite low. I'm not compassionate to myself, and I do beat myself up.
People tend to get self-esteem and confidence mixed up, because you can have a confident person who has low self-esteem. And I think sometimes people who are confident don't realize how low their self-esteem can be sometimes, because they're managing to get through life with their confidence, which is a skill that you develop.
And it's like a will, like you really push through, don't you? It does take a lot of energy, that in itself, to be confident, even though you don't feel quite so great. But it's a self-compassion, starting somewhere with a really simple self-compassion practice is can be really simple, and it grows over time. It's just because I'm sat here, we're having this conversation, doesn't mean that I've got it nailed, and it's I'm perfect at it, for example, even though I teach it, just not within just breath work. Of course, I use compassion and self-forgiveness in breath work, but just as a mentor as well, I try and use it teach it to other people. So but that doesn't still mean that I've got it nailed, because it is this journey of unwriting and undoing conditioning that runs like through our DNA. So
it needs constant work, doesn't it? You can, because life takes over and you kind of get caught up in things, and you're constantly making mistakes as humans. There's always, you go through each month, there'll be something you do wrong on a daily basis at some point, and it does need that constant work and that understanding that you have got to constantly work at it. And I think that's one good thing, like you say, with the practice that you do, that when you start your session and the words that you're saying to those people in the sessions about connecting with themselves, about going within themselves and just doing this for themselves and being compassionate with themselves, it is really quite a big part of the breath work, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is. I think when we can do that work in a dedicated environment, in a dedicated space, it can feel like it has a huge impact, because in day-to-day life, it's very busy, and it's, we're constantly pulled this way and that way. So to really retrain ourselves to do something completely different, to think a different way when we're surrounded by life, can be really hard. So in a breathwork space, but you are creating that time just for you. And I remember the first time one of my teachers and mentors ever introduced this concept, and my whole system just like let down. My whole system just soothed itself, relaxed itself. It's like, oh, thank God. I think the phrase was, I forgive myself for judging myself. And like that's a self-talk.
That's a powerful phrase, isn't it?
So powerful. Like, I forgive myself, putting your hand on your heart, taking a deep breath and saying, I forgive myself for judging myself for whatever it is. I forgive myself for buying into the belief that I'm not good enough. Like, literally my body is like just melting as I say those words.
I feel mine melting you saying
yeah,
those words.
I know. And yeah, I mean, in breath work, if we bring that kind of thought, that consciousness, that thought to ourselves in that space while we're breathing, the mechanics of breathing, the science of the breath work, the energy that's happening or the energy that's moving, and we're saying that kind of stuff, it's like really imprinting it into like deep within our hearts, and yeah, it creates like space for the healing, like you said.
Yeah. I think there are a number of things that people need to go through, aren't they? If somebody was wanting to build up their self-esteem, there's certain parts of the puzzle that they need to sort of put together. And there's that acknowledgement phase where we all feel a whole spectrum of emotions, and we all make mistakes. And it's just having enough mindfulness to acknowledge who we are, what our values are, what we feel about a certain situation, what we feel about what we've done. So that acknowledgement is maybe sort of the starting point of that building block or piecing that puzzle together. And then sort of trying to, you're never really going to release or can't really get rid of self-judgment to as a whole, are you? You can sort of diffuse it or make it a little bit better. So it's this kind of that trying to release some of the self-judgment that we have for what we're doing. And then
oh, sorry, I was going to say, noticing the self-judgment and implementing like that, correcting it almost, or like you say, diffusing it, noticing it, and then diffusing it, and then sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then I suppose it's then where you start putting everything in practice, isn't it? Like the self-kindness and making sure the words that you're saying are positive words, and that you're doing those self-care actions, things like that. And then once you've started going through that process, the acceptance can start coming in, and you can start doing the yang elements of things and those actions,
definitely
putting those actions into place.
Definitely a process.
Really feel that you've hit the nail on the head, as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that came to mind when you were saying that was the guilt that we can sometimes feel around the, not necessarily the self-compassion, because we can talk to ourselves in a nice way and that doesn't impact anybody else. But when we start then taking time out for ourselves, or doing the things that fill us back up, over more on the self-kindness, self-care sphere of this whole conversation, there can be the guilt that comes up, and that can be one of the main barriers. I mean, like yesterday, like I said, I booked myself into the spa for half a day, and my husband was like, even now, so I've been self-employed for 6 years, so I've been doing this for taking time out for myself for a long time, and he was like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, or what are you doing today rather? And I was like, I couldn't tell him at first. I was like, oh, I just got to go somewhere and look at something. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't have to justify, but his judgment of me, the guilt and the ick around what he might think of me putting myself first was a barrier to that. And then about an hour later, I was like, so what are you doing today? And I was like, I'm going to the spa. And he looked at me and I was like, I need some time. It's my day off. I might be self-employed, but I work 4 days a week and I'm working on Saturday. So I'm having Wednesday off and I'm going to go and like fill my cup back up. I really want to go. And, I think we can be surprised. I mean, I've certainly been surprised by my husband's, acceptance of my self-care. I think I know I've got clients and friends and peers and things who've not had the easiest journey, but I think the people that we love, and the people that love us rather, want us to, they know we're important, they know we're worthy, they love us, they see us, in our highest vision. And oftentimes, I really hope this lands for somebody, but oftentimes they want the best for us. So just and it was uncomfortable for me to say to my husband what I was doing, but actually, because he wants the best for me and he loves me and he sees how hard I work, he was really cool about it. And it gives, when we do that for ourselves, it gives other people permission to do that for ourselves as well. So it creates this ripple effect. So there really are no downsides to being more compassionate, being kinder to ourselves. That as we raise our self-esteem, that helps other people. As we, put ourselves first, that helps, that influences other people's decisions around how they treat themselves. So
what the thing that was holding you back there, it wasn't your husband's actual judgment of you going to the spa, it was your perception of what your husband would think about you going to the spa.
When he's seen me having baths at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like there is really no difference, like he'll come home from work in the middle of the day and I'll be like having a bath with some incense on and some relaxed
candles out.
Candles out, roses everywhere, rose petals. And he's not he's witnessed that many times. So it was funny. But but like I said, I really hope that lands for somebody, because that can be one of the biggest barriers. And
I think
it really shouldn't
it's funny though, isn't it? Because like even now, both myself and my husband, if we get invited out with different friends groups, we've got different circles of friends. So you'll get invites here and there to different activities that people are organizing, and the way that we ask, it's kind of like a child, is it okay if we go?
Is it okay? Yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. Well, actually, my husband's like, I'm going to football. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going in the gym. Oh, okay. I think, do you know what? I think maybe, I don't know if this rings true for you, but I think men are a lot more comfortable. This is a generalization, of course, but a lot of gentlemen that I know are a lot better at putting their needs ahead of everybody else's. And I think that's one thing in the feminine arena, as
the
women,
mum part of the feminine side of it
is just putting everybody else ahead of ourselves. And that goes, that happens at home, it happens at work, it happens in all areas of our lives. And
I've witnessed that with most men, but my husband now, he's definitely the exception. He's the one that's he's more nervous than I am about asking to go out with friends, and it's like, it's fine, I want him to go out, I want him to go to the to play five-a-side, and I want him to do the things that make him happy, because he comes back happier. And it's nice to miss each other. We don't want to be in each other's pockets, especially soon as we work together. So
and that's another real great benefit of self-compassion, when we can fill ourselves up, when we can do the things that bring us joy, that when we can exercise things that help increase our self-esteem, everybody benefits. Everybody, like you say, your husband comes back happier when he's done his thing. And we recognize that in our families and in our friends and in our even in the workplace. It's just a really nobody loses.
It's exercising that yang element, isn't it? I need this, so I'm gonna have it.
Yes, exactly, because I deserve it. And I'm it's exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Wellness Realised podcast, Cathy. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners before we depart company?
I just feel called to share that sentence again. Like, I forgive myself for judging myself, or I forgive myself for judging myself as not good enough. Really hold that in your heart, imprint it in your brain. And if you feel like you want to try some breath work, then come and find me, and we can open that space for you.
Great. Thanks, Cathy. Lovely to have you on the show, and I shall speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.